You've seen it everywhere. Someone quits their job, buys a one-way ticket to Bali, posts a photo on a mountaintop with the caption, "Finally finding myself." Or maybe it's closer to home, your friend who's suddenly into meditation, minimalism, journaling at 5 a.m., convinced that this is the path to discovering who they really are. And maybe it's you. You've felt that restless itch, that nagging sense that the real you is buried somewhere underneath all the routine and responsibility, just waiting to be uncovered. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The whole idea of finding yourself might be the very thing keeping you lost. Stay with me, because what I'm about to share will flip the script on one of the most seductive lies we tell ourselves. Let's start with the first type, the one I call the eternal seeker. Picture this. They've done the yoga retreat in India, the silent meditation in Nepal, the vision quest in Peru. They've read every self-help book, tried every personality test, explored every spiritual tradition. They're not tourists. They're genuinely searching. But here's the pattern. Just when they get close to settling into something, they pivot. Actually, I think Buddhism isn't quite it for me. I'm feeling called to shamanism now. There's always another workshop, another guru, another method that promises the breakthrough. The psychology here is fascinating. The eternal seeker is caught in what's called an avoidance loop disguised as exploration. See, the search itself becomes the identity. As long as they're seeking, they don't have to face the possibility that there's no hidden treasure to uncover, that maybe they've been themselves all along, just uncomfortable with what that actually means. The search protects them from commitment, from being pinned down, from the vulnerability of saying, "This is who I am," and having the world respond. It's safer to be perpetually becoming than to ever arrive. The irony, the harder they search for themselves, the more they fragment into a collection of half-tried identities, never fully inhabiting any of them. Then there's another profile, the crisis reinventor. You know this one. Something breaks. A relationship ends. They turn 30 or 40. A parent dies. They get passed over for a promotion. Suddenly, everything is on the table. "I need to find out who I really am," they announce. And off they go. New haircut, new city, new career, new everything. The old life gets framed as fake, inauthentic, a mask they were wearing. The new life? That's the real them, finally emerging. But here's what's actually happening beneath the surface. When we experience a major disruption, our sense of continuity shatters. We lose the narrative thread of who we've been, and instead of integrating that rupture into our ongoing story, we discard entire chapters. Psychologists call this narrative fragmentation. The crisis reinventor isn't finding themselves. They're creating a new character to escape the pain of the current one. And that can work, temporarily. The rush of reinvention feels like liberation. But eventually, because they haven't actually processed what broke, the same patterns resurface. Different city, same problems. Different partner, same conflicts. Because wherever you go, there you are. The person they're running from keeps showing up in the mirror. Now, let's talk about the identity collector. This is subtle, and you might not catch it at first. The identity collector doesn't go on dramatic quests. Instead, they accumulate labels. I'm an INFJ. I'm an Enneagram 4. I'm a Scorpio rising. I'm a highly sensitive person. I'm a winter. I'm left-brained. I'm an eldest daughter. Every framework they encounter becomes another piece of the puzzle, another clue to the mystery of themselves. They light up when they find a category that fits. Oh my God, that's so me. Here's the thing. Personality frameworks aren't bad. They can offer useful maps. But the identity collector is doing something different. They're outsourcing self-understanding to external systems, hoping that if they gather enough labels, enough categories, the sum total will add up to a coherent self. The psychological mechanism here is called reification, treating abstract concepts as concrete things. They're not finding themselves. They're constructing a composite sketch based on other people's systems. And every time they adopt a new label, they're subtly limiting themselves, editing out the parts that don't fit the description. Well, as an introvert, I can't. As a type 4, I'm supposed to. The boxes that promised freedom become cages. You can recognize this type by how often they reference their labels in conversation, as if the label explains rather than describes. But here's the twist. And this is where it gets really interesting. There's another type, the anti-seeker. They roll their eyes at all this finding yourself nonsense. Just live your life, they say. All this navel-gazing is narcissistic. Get a job, start a family, contribute to society. They pride themselves on being practical, grounded, no nonsense. But watch closely. The anti-seeker is often just as trapped, just on the opposite end. They've rejected the search so thoroughly that they've never actually asked themselves what they want, what they value, what brings them meaning. They've adopted the default script, whatever their family, culture, or society handed them, and called it authenticity. This is just who I am. I don't need to overthink it. The psychology here involves what's called foreclosed identity. They've committed to an identity without ever exploring alternatives, and they defend it rigidly because questioning it feels dangerous. The anti-seeker isn't more authentic than the eternal seeker. They've just chosen certainty over curiosity. And beneath that certainty is often a fear that if they looked too closely, they might discover they've been living someone else's life. So they don't look, they mock those who do. And they wonder, in quiet moments they don't discuss, why life sometimes feels flat, scripted, like going through motions. So if seeking yourself is a trap and not seeking is also a trap, what's the way out? Here's what the research actually shows. There is no fixed self to find. You're not a statue buried in marble, waiting to be chiseled out. You're more like a verb than a noun, an ongoing process, not a finished product. The psychologist Dan McAdams talks about identity as narrative. You're the story you tell about yourself, and that story evolves. The healthiest approach isn't finding or avoiding, but authoring. You're not discovering who you are. You're deciding who you become, moment by moment, through the choices you make and the meaning you assign to your experiences. The people who navigate this best? They're not the ones on mountaintops or in boardrooms. They're the ones who hold the paradox, being curious about themselves without making themselves a project, living intentionally without over-examining every choice, staying open to growth without treating their current self as a rough draft. They understand that identity isn't something you find. It's something you build, gently and continuously, through living. So here's the real question. Which type landed closest to home for you? The eternal seeker, always one retreat away from breakthrough. The crisis reinventor, building new selves on the rubble of old ones. The identity collector, assembling a self from borrowed frameworks? Or the anti-seeker, defending against the question entirely? Maybe you're a blend. Maybe you've moved through different types at different times. Drop a comment and let me know. Not because I need the engagement, but because naming these patterns out loud breaks their spell. And if this resonated, if it made you think differently about that nagging urge to find yourself, maybe share it with someone who's standing at that crossroads. Sometimes the most helpful thing we can do is remind each other, you're not lost. You were never lost. You're just human, figuring it out as you go, one imperfect choice at a time.